round robin panel section after that. So if the next speaker, please stand up. Brian Sudlow, please, if you can step forward. Brian's going to speak briefly on the insights from IT history on the search for accessibility and effectiveness. Clearly, we need to think a bit more about accessibility. No, take your seat, and I'll call you back for the panel if that's all right. So, Brian, the floor is yours. Would you mind just briefly introducing yourself as well, so that people have some background as to where you're coming from?
I will do. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, Tom and the other colleagues from AIT. My name is Brian Sudlow. I'm a lecturer in history at Aston University. Like Neil's, my origins are actually in French studies. And whilst I was teaching French studies at Aston, I developed an interest in history of technology. I used to teach a module all about technology in France. And in fact, I've been using internet histories with my students for a few years now. So I'm very interested to hear about the background. So could I have my slides, please? Is that okay?
You can click. Just right click and then you're there.
All right.
You might have to pause when we get to the video, and we'll work that out between us.
Right, okay. So there we go. So I'm going to talk about my current, or one of the current projects that I've got on in the course of the presentation. So I'll say some more about current work in a minute or so. So I suppose I'm tackling that issue about who cares about archives of IT, and that's why I've subtitled this talk, "The Search for Accessibility and Effectiveness." There we go. My key question here at the start is whether archives of IT can promote prospective history, and if so, how? I'm going to come to the idea of prospective history later on in the talk, but essentially what it means is using history as a tool for future tactical and strategic planning. The key questions here for me are the following. First of all, why is AIT currently underused? I've certainly had that sense from talking to Tom and others. If you look at the hits on YouTube for the interviews, they're not particularly high. I know that AIT has aspired to develop more links with universities, which currently are more embryonic than anything else. So why is that the case? And what does that tell us about how to, or what the challenges are really for exploiting AIT better than it's currently been exploited up to now? The second thing that I want to do there is really offer one possible solution, and that's related to my own current research, which is the use of digital storytelling as a way of translating the very rich sources that the archives of IT now represent, using that digital storytelling to communicate in a more agile way all that material. And then lastly, I'll come to the last question about how can digital storytelling actually inspire the future. Capture the past, inspire the future is that tagline of AIT. So I think inspiring the future is something that needs to be unpacked. So let me start with my first point, which is why AIT might be underused. As I've already indicated, AIT has many strengths. It's a set of data-rich sources, not only for history of technology in the field of IT and elsewhere, but also for social history as well. You had a paper, didn't you, a couple of years ago, one of your meetings from a young man whose name I've unfortunately forgotten, but a young historian looking at AIT as a source of social history. And clearly all the tech developments are embedded in the changes in British society over the last sort of 40, 50 years as well. So that's clearly something that's of great interest, as are all the insights that we find from these frontline operators, I'm sure quite a few of whom are here in this room now. And it's a really wonderful initiative that the organisation started those years ago, in order to gather together, those memories and recollections of the pioneers in this field in this country. So why are they underused? My explanation would simply be that this is about time. All the interviews are an hour long, maybe a little bit longer. And the kind of target audience that AIT wants to speak to is intolerant of that sort of use of its time. Why is that? Firstly, because entrepreneurs are, of course, as we know, time poor. And unless the advantages of spending time on something are immediately available, then that is going to go against any kind of resource which requires a lot of time. For the other target audience, young people, inspiring young people with the prospects that could be there in the field of technology and IT. What we do know about Generation Z, this is the generation born between about the mid-90s and the end of the first decade of this century, is that they too are intolerant of anything that takes a lot of time. We know this now. There's investigations into the preferences that Gen Z has for short format media, known in the jargon as snackable content. So this is a problem, isn't it? This is a problem for AIT, who want us to sit still and listen to something for an hour. There you go. And just to do a traditional cost-benefit analysis, clearly these target audiences are missing the benefits and seeing only the cost. That, at least, is my working assumption. Let me talk then briefly about what I'm currently doing, which is with a couple of colleagues. Ahmad Beltagui, who I'm hoping has joined us online, and Ying Yang from Cranfield University. We've been developing digital stories about cases from the Industrial Revolutions as a way of trying to represent or translate scholarship about past industrial transitions for today's manufacturers. What actually can we learn from history? This is it's a tricky question really for historians. But our intention with this project, called Insights from History, has been to try to take this existing scholarship and find a way of boiling it down, or boiling down some of the key lessons, and then presenting those key lessons in short video formats. Let me show you one example, in which we took an article about small-scale technologies in coal mining in the 19th century, and we derived from it what we call an actionable insight, something that manufacturers or tech entrepreneurs today might actually implement in the present day. So if I click again, will this video play?
Who knows, Brian?
All right.
Let me try. I'll try. Yes.
Big technological breakthroughs are exciting, but sometimes smaller innovations can be just as important. It might not sound like much, but a humble lamp helped make industrial production possible. As steam powered factories and cities in 19th century Europe, coal mining became increasingly important. Innovation focused on ways to extract more coal and bring it to the surface faster. But coal mines remained very dangerous, and the risks to miners were not well understood. A mixture of underground gases and coal dust could make the air unsafe for miners to breathe, and lighting a lamp to see in the dark could lead to, well, you can imagine. Safety improved dramatically between 1850 and 1900. Inspections and regulations helped, but that the real impacts came from small-scale technological innovations to help the people who worked in the coal mines. Innovative ventilation systems improved the quality and safety of the air, allowing miners to work deeper for longer. And British and French inventors came up with safety lamps, which could separate a flame from the air and explosive gases around it. Thanks to these inventions, miners could breathe and also see more easily as they worked. So while coal may have grabbed the headlines as it powered growing economies, a series of small-scale innovations held the key to making industrial production possible. Sometimes small-scale innovations are needed to make new technologies safe for people to use.
So that video was produced for us towards the end of 2022, and we've just commissioned another 4 videos, or in the process of commissioning another 4 videos, which will they'll go into production next month. I've yet to trial this kind of translation of scholarship with an audience of historians, and I'm teetering on the edge of this at the moment because, of course, what we expect is the accusation of bowdlerization, vulgarization, simplification. Without getting too far into a theoretical argument against that, what I'm going to say is that what we're doing here is we are translating scholarship for a new audience who would never look at the long, wonderfully written, but inappropriate articles, if you like, for this new audience. They simply wouldn't consult that history. So what we think here is that we have a way of bringing new audiences towards scholarship on IT history, and hopefully you'll see straight away the connection with AIT. So let me get to our process then. What are we doing here? Essentially, we're once we've found that actionable insight. And by the way, the point of that article was about explaining the improvement in safety levels. That was the aim of the authors, but that wasn't our insight. When we read the article, we thought, well, what would a new audience, what would today's digital manufacturers get out of that? And what we thought the actionable insight could be was this question of the use of peripheral small technologies in order to drive bigger structural, infrastructural technologies. So we were then in search, if you like, of an audience need. This also is a way of justifying the translation of these kind of articles. That for us is the hook. This is what's going to draw in a new audience. It's whether this media can speak to the needs that they have. They don't have the same needs as an academic historian audience. They have a completely different set of needs in their own field. So that's it. We use the hook. We try to ask a question. We try to bring people in. The second thing we do then is we tell the history, or rather than saying the history, let me say a history, or one of the histories, to refer to what Niels was saying before. We tell one of the histories, or one dimension, or some of the dimensions, essentially that we can fit in order to illustrate our hook, and then we draw at the end our insight, which I'm calling here hindsight for the purpose of alliteration, the hook, the history, the hindsight, which is essentially a retrospective insight. It's what you see when you look back, the lesson that you see. Hindsight is 20/20 vision, as often people say. There's our digital story solution for how the data-rich sources of archives of IT could build a path towards a wider reception, towards more easier access for the people that AIT wants to attract, towards its project. Let me come then finally to this idea of inspiring the future. It's a great tagline, but it's something that needs to be unpacked and understood and actually problematized. And so, if we've captured the past, okay, how do we inspire the future? And I say that we need to think in proactive ways about the creation of snackable content in order to draw people into the much richer content that Archives of IT makes available. And one source that I've come across here, which has been very helpful for the team that I'm working with, is the idea of prospective history. It's a concept that's been developed by Roy Sudlow over the last few years. Sudlow works very much in the field of business history, but he's been using this idea of prospective history in order to show what history could do for business. And he's mapped the uses of history in business onto a framework that's used to describe what are called dynamic capabilities in business. This relates to research done by Thies et al. So, argues Sudlow, history can be used to help business people sense opportunities, current opportunities, to help them to seize those opportunities, see how those opportunities can actually be seized hold of, and then finally for refining their ability to think and plan for the future, to visualize what their own futures should be in the light of that historical inspiration, if you like. But we argue that in order for the past to become inspiration, it has to be interiorized. It has to be used. Just thinking back to my own linguistic past, language is only acquired when it's understood and used meaningfully. So how can these histories be used meaningfully by visitors to Archives of IT? What we're doing in the next phase of our research is to hold some participatory digital story workshops. So we're not just going to drag people in and get them to watch the videos. What we want to do is bring them in, show them videos, but get them then to think proactively about what their own story looks like going forward in the light of the insights that they've seen. Now, hypothetically, we're looking at how this could work. And for now, hypothetically, we're proposing 2 or 3 things. Firstly, that these histories can serve as curatives, because we all suffer from biases, and we all have to work at purifying our biases. And history, in fact, is one of the ways in which we can step outside, step beyond our own horizons. So in that sense, we think that these histories could serve as curatives. Secondly, then, histories could serve also as catalysts, because essentially what we find in them is a way of enriching the imagination, of making users of history more sensitive to the unexpected and the contingent. The contingent is the essence of history in many ways, and so we think that history could work as a catalyst, and therefore, with the curatives and the catalysts of history at work, hopefully then these future perfect stories will become more envisageable. So just finally to wind up, by the way, if you know Vivox, or you just put vivox.app into your phone and go to this number, or you can take a picture of that and go there. If you've got any comments or questions, drop them into Vivox for me, and I'll have a look at them in the next hour or so. So we're making more films right now. We're going ahead with those. We're producing some professional. We've got some funding from Interact, the Internet Network, to produce those. We're also making our own videos using the WeVideo platform, and we want to test the effectiveness. Essentially, how effective can these stories be on today's digital manufacturers? Today's business people will only know that fully, will only have tested that hypothesis fully once we've had some workshops and we can gather in that data. I think it's there that we see very much the potential for collaboration with Tom and his team, and with the wonderful material that they've gathered together. So thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for listening.